With reference to willful defaulters in India, consider the following statements. Willful defaulters in India, consider the following statements. A willful defaulter is a person who sells assets given as a security against the loan without informing lenders. The default amount needs to be at least 25 lakh rupees to be termed as willful default. The default amount needs to be at least 25 lakh rupees to be termed as willful default. A willful defaulter is a person who sells assets given as a security against the loan without informing lenders. A special data dissemination standard related to financial data transparency is established by International Monetary Fund. Special data dissemination standard related to financial data transparency is established by which of the following? International Monetary Fund. Which of the following are the most likely consequences of rising inflation in an economy? Which of the following are the most likely consequences of rising inflation in an economy? Short term increase in investments, depreciation of the currency, increase in volume of exports, redistribution of wealth from creditors to debtors. Short term increase in investments, depreciation of the currency, increase in volume of exports, redistribution of wealth from creditors to debtors. Inflation can be defined as sustained rise in the general level of prices, persistent increases in the general level of prices. There are multi-dimensional effects of inflation on an economy both at the micro and macro levels. Rising inflation indicates rising aggregate demand and indicates comparatively lower supply and higher purchasing capacity among consumers. Usually, higher inflation suggests the producer to increase their production level, as it is generally considered as an indication of higher demand in the economy. Investment in the economy is boosted by inflation in the short run because of two reasons. Higher inflation indicates higher demand and suggests entrepreneurs to expand their production level, and higher the inflation, lower the cost of loan. With every inflation, the currency of the economy depreciates, loses its exchange value in front of a foreign currency, provided it follows the flexible currency regime. Though it is a comparative manner, there might be inflationary pressure on the foreign currency against which the exchange rate is compared. Purchasing power parity is a popular metric used by macroeconomic analysts that compares different countries' currencies through a basket of goods approach. According to this concept, two currencies are in equilibrium, known as the currencies being at par. When a basket of goods is priced the same in both countries, taking into account the exchange rates, PPP allows for economists to compare economic productivity and standards of living between countries. In terms of PPP dollars, India is the third largest economy in the world. PPP allows economists to compare economic productivity and standards of living between countries. In terms of PPP dollars, India is the third largest economy in the world. Default means not meeting loan repayment obligations. According to the Reserve Bank of India, a default is willful when it fulfills one of the following four conditions. A borrower or an entity does not pay up even when it has the capacity to pay. A borrower has not used the loan for the purpose borrowed and diverted it elsewhere. A borrower has siphoned off the funds and the money is not available with it in the form of other assets, and a borrower sells assets given as security against the loan without informing lenders. Following can be termed as willful defaulters: individuals, jurist persons means a group of individuals such as corporations and all forms of business enterprises. A lending institution cannot term an entity for an individual a willful defaulter in the following cases. A one-off case of default needs to take into account the repayment track record. The default should be established to be international and the defaulter should be informed about the same. The defaulter should also be given a chance to clarify his stand on this issue. The defaulter amounts needs to be at least 25 lakh to be included in the category of willful defaults. If an entity's or individual's names figures in the list of willful defaulters, the following restrictions get in action on them: barred from participating in the capital market, barred from availing any further banking facilities and to access financial institutions for 5 years for the purpose of starting a new venture. The lenders can initiate the process of recovery with full vigor and can even initiate criminal proceedings if required. The lending institutions may not allow any person related to the defaulting company to become a board member of another company as well. The Schedule 12 of the Indian Constitution was added by the 74th Amendment Act of 1992. It contains provisions that define the municipalities' powers, authority and responsibilities in order for them to function as local governments. Urban local bodies can impose tax on items mentioned in the Schedule 12 and assigned by the state legislatures. Some items are property tax, including surcharge on property tax, tax on trade, profession and calling, tax on advertisement, service charge on central government properties, tax on carriages, service charge on central government properties, tax on carriages, tax on carts, CARTS. Some non-tax revenue sources are receipt from water supply, sewerage, drainage, municipal markets, building plan sanction fees, license fees, solid waste management, health services, amusement fees, car parking fees and interest on fixed deposit. Agricultural income and taxes on mineral rights are the items mentioned in the state list of Schedule 7. Agriculture income and taxes on mineral rights are the items mentioned in the state list of Schedule 7. So, they are taxed by the states and not urban local bodies. National Bank for Agricultural and Rural Development NABARD was established in 1982 on the recommendations of B. Sivaraman Committee to implement the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development Act 1981. NABARD came into existence on 12th July 1982 by transferring the agricultural credit functions of RBI and refinance functions of then Agricultural Refinance and Development Corporation ARDC. NABARD today is fully owned by the Government of India. NABARD today is fully owned by the Government of India. The RBI divested its entire stake in the NABARD amounting 20 crore rupees. With this, the Government of India now holds 100% stake in both the financial institutions. The headquarters of NABARD is in New Delhi. The main objectives of NABARD are promotion of agricultural and rural development through participative financial and non-financial interventions, innovations, technology and institutional development for securing prosperity. It provides refinance to rural financial institutions for investment credit, long-term loan and production and marketing credit, short-term loan, purposes for farm and off-farm activities in rural areas. Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana PMMY is a flagship scheme of the Ministry of Finance. Any citizen who has a business plan for a non-farm sector income generating activities such as manufacturing, processing or service sector are eligible for the loans under the scheme. Though the scheme covers traders of fruits and vegetables, in general it does not refinance the agricultural sector. Under the scheme, the micro units can avail up to 10 lakh rupees loan through refinancing route from all public and private sector banks, RRBs, cooperative banks, NBFCs, microfinance institutions, district banks, etc. There is no fixed interest rate in the scheme. As per Government of India, presently banks charge interest rates between base rate plus 1% to 7% per annum. Also, there is no subsidy in general for the loan given under PMMY. However, if the loan application is related to a government scheme, that provides capital subsidies, it will be eligible under PMMY as well. Fisher effects concept was developed by Irving Fisher 1867 to 1947, which shows relationship between inflation and the interest rate. It is expressed by an equation popular as the Fisher equation, that is R is equals to small r plus f, capital R is equals to small r plus f, where capital R is equals to nominal interest rate, small r is equals to real interest rate, and capital F is equals to rate of annual inflation. That is equals to, that means nominal interest rate equals to real interest rate plus rate of annual inflation. The nominal interest rate on a loan is the sum of the real interest rate and the rate of inflation expected over the duration of the loan. The Fisher effect can be seen each time one goes to the bank. The interest rates an investor has on savings account is really nominal interest rate. For example, if the nominal interest rate on a savings account is 4% and the expected rate is expected rate of inflation is 3%, then money in the savings account is really growing at 1%. The Financial Services Institutions Bureau FSIB has replaced the Bank Board Bureau BBB. It will recommend candidates to fill in key posts at state-run banks, insurers, and other financial institutions. The FSIB will advise the government on a suitable performance appraisal system for whole-time directors and non-executive chairman of the state-run financial services institutions. It will build a data bank relating to the performance of public sector banks, PSBs, FIs, and insurance companies. It will advise the government on formulation and enforcement of a code of conduct and ethics for whole-time directors. Formulation and enforcement of a code of conduct and ethics for whole-time directors in these institutions. The FSIB, Financial Services Institutions Bureau, will even help these state-run banks, FIs, and insurers in developing business strategies and capital raising plans, etc. The FSIB means Financial Services Institutions Bureau has replaced the Banks Board Bureau. Will comprise a chairperson nominated by the central government, the secretaries of the Department of Financial Services and Public Enterprises, the chairman of the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, and a deputy governor of the Reserve Bank of India. Apart from them, there will be 3 members with knowledge of banks and other financial institutions, and 3 more with knowledge of insurance. Stagflation is an economic condition when stagnant economic growth, high unemployment, and high inflation combine together. Basically, inflation plus stagnant growth equals stagflation. Inflation plus stagnant growth equals stagflation. Stagflation was first recognized during the 1970s when many developed economies experienced rapid inflation and high unemployment as a result of an oil shock. One of the principal causes of stagflation has been restriction in the aggregate supply. When aggregate supply is reduced, then there is a fall in output and employment, and the price level rises. A reduction in aggregate supply may be due to a restriction in labor supply. Phillips curve is a graphic curve that advocates a relationship between inflation and unemployment in an economy. Phillips curve is a graphic curve that advocates a relationship between inflation and unemployment in an economy. As per the curve, there is a trade-off between inflation and unemployment, that is an inverse relationship between them. The curve suggests that lower the inflation, higher the unemployment, and higher the inflation, lower the unemployment. Neobanks are online only financial technology. Neobanks are online only financial technology companies that operate solely digitally and are viable mobile apps. Simply put, a neobank is a digital bank that does not have any branches. Instead of having a physical presence at a set location, neobanking is entirely online. Neobanks leverage its modern digital platform to analyze customer data and make data-driven decisions. Neobanks are disrupting the traditional banking system by leveraging technology and artificial intelligence to offer a range of personalized services to customers. Due to the absence of enabling regulations, neobanks cannot accept deposits or offer lending products on their own books. That is why some fintechs have a non-banking financial company, NBFC, and their parent to engage in lending activities, while Most other partner with banks and financial institutions. The Ministry of Finance does not issue license to neo-banks. Neo-bankers are yet to be recognized by the service by the Reserve Bank of India (RBI). So they have to engage with regulated banks and financial institutions to offer financial products and services. The likes of Jupiter, FI, Neo, and Razorpay are currently working in partnerships with traditional banks. Okay, अच्छा. मैंने बेसिक क्वेश्चन सुनता. The Vivad Se Vishwas scheme for direct tax disputes allows taxpayers to pay only the principal tax amount and enjoy waiver of interest and penalty. The scheme introduced in 2020 covers direct taxes, barring those related to wealth tax, securities transaction tax, commodity transaction tax, and tax on online advertisements charged by the income tax department. The equalization levy. Nidhi means a company which has been incorporated exclusively with the object of developing the habit of thrift and reserve funds among its members, receiving deposits and lending to its members only for their mutual benefit. Nidhi companies are monetary business companies operating in India and can be classified as a non-banking financial companies (NBFC). They are registered under Section 406 of the Companies Act 2013 or Section 620A of the Companies Act 1956 and are regulated by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India. Chit funds are India's oldest type of savings program and they dominate the unorganized money market business. A chit fund is a committee that allows its members to pay fixed monthly installments for a specified length of time. The chit fund companies are exempted from having to register themselves with the Reserve Bank of India despite being a form of a non-banking financial company because they are regulated by their own state regulators instead of the RBI. They are required to apply to the chit fund register of the respective state to obtain registration as per Section 4 of the Chit Funds Act 1982. The Constitution of India has provision Article 112 for such a document called Annual Financial Statement to be presented in the Parliament before the commencement of every new fiscal year, popularly known as the Union Budget. The Union Budget has 3 sets of data for every concerned sector or subsector of the economy. Actual data of the preceding year, preceding year means 1 year before the year which the budget is being presented. Suppose the budget presented for the year 2022 to 2023, the budget will give the financial actual data for the year 2020-2021, provisional data for the current year, that is 2021 to 2022. Since the budget for 2022 to 2023 is presented in 2021 to 2022 itself, it provides provisional estimates for this year, budgetary estimates for the following year. Here following year means 1 year after the year in which the budget is presented for or the year for which the budget is being presented, that is 2022 to 2023. The markets in crypto assets MICA launched by the European Union is the first comprehensive regulatory framework for digital assets. Some expect it to become a trendsetter for crypto regulation globally. Under the regulation, the European Securities and Markets Authority or ESMA will be given powers to step into ban or restrict crypto platforms if they are seen to not properly protect investors or threaten market integrity or financial stability. Markets in crypto assets will also address environmental concerns surrounding crypto. It will force firms to disclose their energy consumption as well as the impact of digital assets on the environment. Relevance: in June 2022, the European Parliament agreed upon a new law to regulate cryptocurrencies. The markets in crypto assets law launched by the European Union is the first comprehensive regulatory framework for digital assets. Some expect it to become a trendsetter for crypto regulation globally. Under the regulation, the European Securities and Markets Authority or ESMA will be given powers to step into ban or restrict crypto platforms if they are not seen to not properly protected investors or threaten markets integrity or financial stability. In the twin balance sheet crisis, on one hand, the public sector banks are unfit to promote lending, which have been which led lenders to the sector hit with high non-performing assets. On the other hand, big private corporates are not eligible to borrow due to high losses and invest in the economy. The corporate sector over expands during the period of boom, leaving them with obligations that they cannot repay. This leads to the defaulting of debits by the corporate companies, leaving the lender and the bank's balance sheets impaired. It is devastating for growth as the corporate sector, limping in such a trap, is often reluctant to invest, and the ones with stable, sound financial health and do not show much interest to invest. Similarly, banks are also in a terrible financial crisis due to the non-performing assets limiting and choking their ability to lend in such a scenario. A recession is a normal part of the business cycle that generally occurs when GDP contracts for at least two for at least 2 quarters. A depression, on other hand, is an extreme fall in economic activity that lasts for years rather than just several quarters. The major traits of depression could be given as follow. An extremely low aggregate demand in the economy causes activities to deaccelerate. The inflation being comparatively lower, the employment avenues start shrinking, forcing unemployment rate to grow fast. To keep the business going, production houses go for forced labor cuts for retrenchment to cut down production cost and be competitive in the market. Recession is smaller to depression, except production houses don't go for forced labor cuts or retrenchment. The major traits of recession are: there is a general fall in demand as economic activities takes a downturn. Inflation remains lower or shows further signs of falling down. Employment rate falls or employment rate grows. Industries resort to price cuts to sustain their business. A bad bank is a financial entity set up to buy non-performing assets (NPAs) or bad loans from banks. The aim of setting up a bad bank is help to ease the burden on banks by taking bad loans off their balance sheets and get them to lend again to customers without constraints. After the purchase of a bad loan from a bank, the bad bank may later try to restructure and sell the NPA to investors who might be interested in purchasing it. A bad bank makes a profit in its operations if it manages to sell the loan at a price higher than what it paid to acquire the loan from a commercial bank. National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited (NARCL) has been incorporated under the Companies Act and has applied to the Reserve Bank of India for license as an asset reconstruction company (ARC). NARCL has been set up by commercial banks to aggregate and consolidate stressed assets for the subsequent resolution. Public sector banks will remain 51% ownership in NARCL. While NARCL will require and aggregate the identified NPA accounts from the banks, the debit resolution process will be handled by India Debit Resolution Company Limited. Relevance: the Government of India has announced that the National Asset Reconstruction Company (NARCL) along with the India Debit Resolution Company will take over the first set of bad loans from banks and try to resolve them. Gross National Product (GNP) is the gross domestic product of a country added with its income from abroad. Here, the transboundary economic activities of an economy are also taken into account. The items which are counted in the segment income from abroad are private remittances, interest on external loans, external grants. The International Monetary Fund and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development use weights based on PPP purchasing power parity rates, while the World Bank uses market exchange rates to determine the weights in its regional and global aggregations of real GDP. Every asset goes for depreciation in the process of their uses, which means they wear and tear. The governments of the economies decide and announce the rates by which assets depreciate. It is done in India by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and a list is published which is used by different sections of the economy to determine the real levels of depreciation in different assets. Gross value added GVA adds up the value of goods and services produced in an economy after deducting the input costs, while gross domestic product is a measure of the country's national income by adding up the expenditures in the economy. Fiscal drags. Fiscal drag is an economic term whereby inflation or income growth moves taxpayers into higher tax brackets. This is an effect increases government tax revenue without actually increasing tax rates. It is a restraining effect of the progressive taxation economies feel on their expansion. Fall in the total demand in the economy due to people moving from lower to higher tax brackets, and the government tax receipts go on increasing. For the individuals pushed into a higher tax bracket, the proportion of income as tax has increased, resulting in fiscal drag. This can result in deflationary pressure attributed to either lack of state spending or excess taxation. To neutralize this negative impact, governments usually increase personal tax allowances. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code (IBC) was brought in 2016 to create time-bound processes for insolvency resolution of companies and individuals. Companies have to complete the entire insolvency exercise within 180 days. The deadline may be extended if the creditors do not raise objections on the extension. When a default in repayment occurs, creditors gain control over debitors' assets and must take decisions to resolve insolvency. Under IBC Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, debitor and creditor both can start recovery proceedings against each other. There is an exemption to the applicability of the code that it shall not apply to corporate persons who are regulated financial service providers like banks, insurance companies and financial institutions. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, Bankruptcy Board of India, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India was established under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. It has regulatory oversight over the insolvency professionals, insolvency professional agencies, insolvency professional entities and information utilities. It writes and enforces rules for processes, namely corporate insolvency resolution, corporate liquidation, individual insolvency resolution and individual bankruptcy under the code. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code Amendment Bill is listed for introduction in the 2022 Moon session of Parliament. The Basel Accords are a set of agreements set by the Basel Committee on Bank Supervision, which provides recommendations on bank regulations in regards to capital risk, market risk and operational risk. The purpose of the accords is to ensure that financial institutions have enough capital on account to meet obligations and absorb unexpected losses. Basel III guidelines were released in 2010. These guidelines were introduced in response to the financial crisis of 2008. A need was felt to further strengthen the system as banks in the developed economies were undercapitalized, over leveraged and had a greater reliance on short-term funding. Basel III introduced a non-risk based leverage ratio to serve as a backstop to the risk-based capital requirements. Banks are required to hold a leverage ratio in excess of 3%. The non-risk based leverage ratio is calculated by dividing Tier 1 capital by the average total consolidated assets of a bank. All India financial institutions are not exempted from complying with these norms. The RBI has even released a draft framework on master directions to implement the Basel III capital framework for AIFIs, including Exim Bank, NABARD, NHB and SIDBI. These relevance, the RBI has released a draft framework on master directions to implement the Basel III capital framework for AIFIS. State Bank of India SBI, a Fortune 500 company, is an Indian multinational public sector banking and financial services statutory body headquartered in Mumbai. The Government of India enacted the State Bank of India Act 1955 that partially nationalized the three imperial banks, mainly operating in the three past presidencies with their 466 branches, and named them the State Bank of India, the first public sector bank to merge in India. The Government of India has acquired SBI's 59.73% stake from the RBI in the year 2013. As of now, Government of India held around 61.23% equity shares in SBI. The RBI does not own any stake in the SBI currently. The chairperson of the RBI is appointed by the central government as per convention. Thus, SBI chairman is appointed from a pool of serving managing directors at the bank. Non-performing assets are the bad loans of the bank. The criteria to identify such assets have been changing over the time. In order to follow international best practices and to ensure greater transparency, the Reserve Bank of India (RBI) shifted to the current policy in 2004. Under it, a loan is considered NPA if it has not been serviced for one term, that is 90 days. This is known as 90-day overdue norm. A non-performing asset is a loan or advance for which the principal or interest payment remained overdue for a period of 90 days. NPAs were classified into three types: substandard, a remaining NPAs for less than or equal to 12 months, doubtful, remaining NPAs for more than 12 months, loss assets, where the loss has been identified by the bank or internal or external auditors or the RBI inspection, but the amount has not been written off. Relevance: gross non-performing assets of banks have hit a 6-year low of 5.9% as of March 2022. NASA launched its new Laser Communications Relay Demonstration LCRD, the agency's first two-way end-to-end optical relay. With relays missions are not required to have direct line of sight to antennas on Earth, increasing communications coverage. LCRD creates a continuous path for data flowing from missions in space to ground stations on Earth, making a complete end-to-end system. Additionally, LCRD's ability to both send and receive data from missions and the ground stations makes the system two-way. Together, these capabilities make LCRD NASA's first two-way end-to-end optical relay. LCRD has two optical terminals, one to receive data from a user's spacecraft and the other to transmit data to ground stations. The modems will translate the digital data into laser signals. This will then be transmitted via encoded beams of infrared light. Unlike radio frequency communications, optical signals cannot penetrate clouds. LCRD will transmit data received from missions to two ground stations located in Table Mountain, California, and Halikala, Hawaii. These locations are chosen for them their minimal cloud coverage. Relevance. Recently, NASA launched its new Laser Communications Relay Demonstration (LCRD), the agency's first ever laser communication system from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Alloys have atomic components of multiple elements, therefore they have a chemical structure different from pure metals. Resistivity of an alloy is generally higher than that of its constituent metals. They also have higher melting point than pure metals. Alloys do not oxidize, burn readily at high temperatures. For this reason, they have commonly used in electrical heating devices like electric iron toasters, etc. Black hole. A black hole is a region in space where the pulling force of gravity is so strong that light is not able to escape. That light is not able to escape. The strong gravity occurs because matter has been pressed into a teeny space. Stellar black holes are formed when the center of a very massive star collapses in upon itself. This collapse also causes supernova or an exploding star that blasts part of the star into space. On the contrary, supermassive black holes are a result of hundreds or thousands of tiny black holes that merge together. It will also result from the collapse of a stellar cluster. A group of stars are all falling together. Further, they could also arise from large clusters of dark matter. The sun does not have enough mass to collapse into black hole. In billion of years, when the sun is at the end of its life, it will become a red giant star. Then it has used the last of its fuel. It will throw off outer layers and turn into a glowing ring of gas called planetary nebula. Finally, all that will be left of the sun is a cooling white dwarf star. Baryonic matter, also called visible matter, consists of baryons, an overarching name for subatomic particles such as protons, neutrons, and electrons. Antimatter consists of particles that are essentially the same as visible matter particles but opposite electrical charges. These particles are called antiprotons and positrons or anti-electrons. When particles meet particles, an explosion ensues that leads to the two types of matter cancelling each other output. Brown dwarfs are failed stars that did not accumulate enough material to kickstart nuclear fission in their cores. Ultrasound is generally used to clean parts located in hard to reach places, for example, spiral tube, odd shaped parts, electronic components, etc. Objects to be cleaned are placed in a cleaning solution and ultrasonic waves are sent into solution. Due to the high frequency, the particles of dust, grease and dirt gets detached from dropout. The objects thus get thoroughly cleaned. Ultrasounds can be used to detect cracks and flaws in metal blocks. The cracks are holes inside the metal blocks which are invisible from outside. Reduces the strength and the structure. Ultrasonic waves are allowed to pass through the metal block and detectors are used to detect transmitted waves. If there is even a small defect, the ultrasound gets reflected back indicating the presence of the flaw or defect. Ultrasound may be employed to break small stones formed in the kidneys into fine grains. These grains later get flushed out with urine. Ultrasonography, which is based on ultrasound, is also used for examination of the fetus during pregnancy to detect congenital defects and growth abnormalities. noble gases. Okay, first ఇది చదువుదాం. Overnight fermentation of idli batter allows the rapid growth of the naturally occurring microorganisms with Leuconostoc mesenteroids and Streptococcus thermophilus in grains, legumes or utensils. These microorganisms divide and produce lactic acid and carbon dioxide that makes the batter anaerobic. Bubbles of carbon dioxide from a forth on top of the fermentation mixture. Adding a small amount of yeast also helps in fermentation and the batter comes out very nice, resulting in the best idlis. ఓహో ఇడ్లీ చేసుకున్నామా వద్దులే ఎగ్జామ్ దగ్గర ఉంది బయట ఎక్కడ తినేద్దాం అయినా ఈ టైంలో ఇడ్లీ ఎక్కడ దొరుకుతాయి కదా 1 గంటకి అర్ధరాత్రి. Alpha Food is an AI based protein structure production tool. Alpha Fold. AlphaFold is an AI based protein structure production tool. It is based on a computer system called a deep neural network. Inspired by human brain, neural networks use a large amount of input data and provide the desired output exactly like how a human brain would. AlphaFold is fed with protein sequences as input. When protein sequences enter through one end, the predicted 3-dimensional structures come out through the other. It uses processes based on training, learning, retraining and relearning. Proteins carry out all the functions inside a living cell. Therefore, knowing protein structure and function is essential to understanding human diseases. Muscle fatigue occurs due to the accumulation of lactic acid. When the supply of oxygen is less and the requirement of energy is high in the body, then a high amount of lactic acid is formed. Boric acid is weakly acidic hydrate of boric oxide with mild antiseptic, antifungal and antiviral properties. It is used in the treatment of yeast infections and cold sores. Vinegar is a combination of acetic acid and water. Vinegar is a combination of acetic acid and water. It also contains trace vitamins, mineral salts and amino acids. Today vinegar is often touted as an all purpose treatment for everything from minor alignments to chronic diseases. Okay, the three most common acids in soft drinks are citric, carbonic and phosphoric acids. Soft drink makers often and phosphoric acid to colas to produce a sharp flavor and to slow the growth of mold and bacteria. Most of the acidity in colas comes from phosphoric acid. Vinegar is a combination of acetic acid and water. It also contains trace vitamins, mineral salts and amino acids. Today vinegar is often touted as an all purpose treatment for everything from minor alignments to chronic diseases. Nitrous oxide, sometimes called laughing gas, is a safe and effective sedative agent. It is mixed with oxygen and inhaled through a small mask that fits over your nose to help you relax. The mixture of carbon dioxide and hydrogen is called water gas. As this mixture of CO and H2 is used for the synthesis of methanol and a number of hydrocarbons, it is called synthesis gas or syngas. Nowadays syngas is produced from sewage, sawdust, scrap wood, newspapers, etc. The process of producing syngas from coal is called coal gasification. Riot control agents, sometimes referred to as tear gas, are chemical components that temporarily make people unable to function by causing irritation to the eyes, mouth, throat and lungs and skin. Several different compounds are considered to be riot control agents. The most common compound is known as the chloroacetophenone. Aqua regia, Latin for royal water, is a solution of hydrochloric acid. The traditional solution is a 3:1 mixture of hydrochloric acid and nitric acid respectively. It is commonly used to remove noble metals such as gold, platinum, palladium from substrates. Isomerism is the phenomena which more the one compound has the same chemical formula but different chemical structures. They have the same number of the same kinds of atoms but different chemical and physical properties due to different chemical structures, which is the arrangement of the atoms in the molecule. Compounds that exhibit isomerism known as isomers. The term was coined by the Swedish chemist Jacob Berzelius in the year 1930. Uses and importance: air pollution, chemistry, even slightly different structures can evoke dramatic differences in chemical and physical properties. Drug and pharmaceutical industries: food, carbohydrate isomers, nutrients, vitamin C, pleasant smell from roses. Okay, isomerism. Isotopes are defined as the atoms of the same element having the same atomic number but different mass numbers. Many elements consist of a mixture of isotopes. Each isotopes of an element is a pure substance. The chemical properties of isotopes are similar but their physical properties are different. Since the chemical properties of all the isotopes of an element are the same, normally we are not concerned about taking a mixture, but some isotopes having special properties which find them useful in various fields. Some of them are: an isotope of uranium is used as a fuel in nuclear reactors. An isotope of cobalt is used in the treatment of cancer. An isotope of iodine is used in the treatment of goitre. Multiple isotopes are vital to protecting the nation from physical threats. For example, neutron detectors from contain lithium-6, a scintillation material, to detect the illegal transport of nuclear materials at airports, border crossings and ports. Similarly, nickel-63 offers an inexpensive method for airport security officials to detect explosives as well as hazardous chemicals and vapors. Raman scattering is the phenomenon of inelastic scattering of photons, where the frequency of the scattered photon is different from the incident photon. Raman spectroscopy is a non-destructive chemical analysis technique which provides detailed information about chemical structure, phase and polymorphy, crystallinity and molecular interactions. It is based upon the interaction of light with the chemical bonds with a material. Raman effect finds application in various fields like in nanotechnology to understand the structure of nanowires, in biology and medicine where the low frequency DNAs and proteins are studied, and chemistry to understand the structure of molecules and their bonds. Rayleigh scattering: the blue color of the sky is caused by the scattering of sunlight of the molecules of the atmosphere. This scattering, called Rayleigh scattering, is more effective at short wavelengths, the blue and the visible spectrum. Therefore, the light scattered down to the earth at a large angle with respect to the direction of the sun's light is predominantly in the blue end of the spectrum. Researchers have turned to Raman spectroscopy to detect RNA viruses present in saliva samples. However, in case of COVID-19 pandemic, it can be used only for screening, because the RNA viruses detected could be common cold virus as well as any other RNA virus such as HIV. The rainbow is caused due to combination effect of dispersion, refraction and reflection of sunlight. Dispersion, refraction and reflection of sunlight by spherical water droplets of rain. It is an example of the dispersion of sunlight by the water drops in the atmosphere. The conditions for observing a rainbow are that the sun should be shining in one part of the sky, say near western horizon, while it is raining in the opposite party of the sky, say eastern horizon. Rainbows caused by sunlight always appear in the section of sky directly opposite the sun. Sunlight is first refracted as it enters a raindrop, which causes the different wavelengths colors of white light to separate. Longer wavelength of light red are bent the at least, while the shorter wavelength violet are bent the most. Next, these component rays strike the inner surface of the water drop and get internally reflected. If the angle between the refracted ray and normal to the drop surface is greater than the critical angle, the reflected light is refracted again as it comes out of the drop. The colors on a primary rainbow are always in order of their wavelength from longest to shortest: red, orange, yellow, green, blue and violet. Spontaneous symmetry breaking often occurs when there is a phase in transition between a high temperature symmetric phase and a low temperature one, which is the in which the symmetry is spontaneously broken. For example, freezing. If there is a round bowl of water sitting on a table, it looks the same from every direction. It has rotational symmetry, but when it freezes, the ice crystals form in specific orientations, breaking the symmetry. Relevance: time reversal symmetry breaking magnetic fields have been discovered inside a Kagome superconductor. There are four fundamental forces at the work in the universe: the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, the electromagnetic force and the gravitational force. They work over different ranges and have different strengths. The correct order is gravitational force is less than weaker nuclear force is less than electromagnetic force is less than strong nuclear force. Gravitational force is the weakest force but has infinite range. Weak nuclear force is the next weakest but has short range. Electromagnetic force is a stronger force with infinite range. The strong nuclear force is the strongest but has short range. Adi 12:31 AM.